Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me. I'm Sajong Lee, a compliance consultant at Gilbert Compliance. Today I'm going to walk you through Korea's Fair Trade Compliance Program Evaluation, usually called the CP Evaluation. It's the system the Korea Fair Trade Commission uses to assess how effectively companies operate their fair trade compliance programs under Korean competition law. This video is aimed mainly at multinational companies operating in Korea, compliance professionals around the world, and anyone who wants a clear understanding of how Korea evaluates compliance under its fair trade framework. Here's how I'll go through it. I try to keep it simple, so I won't go into every single detail, but it will cover the key points and what's essential to understand the framework in general. So starting with the overview, the evaluation is a voluntary review carried out once every year to look at how effectively a company operated its fair trade compliance program over the previous calendar year. The results are published as absolute grades, A, AA, or AAA. We used to have 6 grades going down to D, but earlier this year the system was simplified and became more like a qualification. The overall framework is set by the Korea Fair Trade Commission, and the actual evaluation is conducted by an external organization, in practice the Korea Fair Trade Mediation Agency, through an expert evaluation committee. The policy gained its legal footing in June 2024 when amendments to the Monopoly Regulation and Fair Trade Act brought the incentive schemes linked to the CP evaluation into statute. This statutory basis now allows the KFTC to offer incentives such as administrative surcharge reductions to companies that operate their programs effectively. Compliance programs in this sense aren't new in Korea, and here the term CP is very specific. It refers only to fair trade compliance program and not compliance programs more broadly. The KFTC first introduced CP in 2001 as a voluntary initiative. There was no evaluation at that stage. The formal evaluation system began in 2006, and in the early years, participation was reasonably healthy, supported by incentives like surcharge reductions and public recognition. But then participation dropped sharply. From 2013, any company with a violation in the previous 2 years became automatically disqualified. Given that the KFTC enforces 13 different statutes, large conglomerates were almost guaranteed to have at least one issue during that time frame, so many simply stopped applying. This is not in the slide, but in 2019, the KFTC revised the CP guidelines significantly, strengthening the standards and clarifying how evaluation should be carried out. These improvements continued, and in 2023, the MRFTA was amended to legally establish the CP evaluation incentive framework from June 2024. You'll see the relevant article from MRFTA on the slide. It provides the legal grounds for evaluating compliance programs and granting incentives. You can read the full text in the slide material, so I'll just move on. You can also download the slides from the link in the description. The KFTC sets out 8 basic components that a company must have in place to be recognized as having adopted a fair trade compliance program. So basically, they are the CP adoption requirements. These aren't the evaluation criteria, they're simply the structural requirements that define what a CP is by the KFTC. Since there's no official English translation, I've kept the wording in the slides as close to the Korean as possible. Some of the phrases may sound a little bit off, so please bear that in mind. Let me talk through them in a natural way. First, a company needs proper internal standards and procedures so that employees clearly understand the fair trade laws and how they apply in their day-to-day work. Second, there needs to be visible commitment and support from top management, because without leadership involvement, a CP can't function effectively. Third, this company must appoint a compliance officer, someone with enough authority and resources to actually run the program. Fourth, the company needs a compliance manual that explains relevant competition laws and the company's internal standards and procedures, and this has to be accessible to employees. Fifth, regular and systemic training is required, not just general training, but also more targeted sessions for higher risk areas such as sales, purchasing, and management. Sixth, the company must have a proper internal audit and monitoring system that can detect issues early and report its findings at least twice a year to the board or equivalent. Seventh, there must be clear disciplinary measures for violations, and the company needs to take steps to prevent similar issues in future. And finally, the company should regularly evaluate the effectiveness of its CP and carry out improvements. Together, these 8 elements describe the basic structure the KFTC expects to see in any fair trade compliance program. Now, the evaluation looks at how effectively a company operated its compliance program during the year being reviewed. As I mentioned earlier, the evaluation itself is voluntary, but the results are published as absolute grades A, AA, or AAA. Each year, companies submit their applications in March, and the evaluation process continues throughout the year. What the committee examines is not just a formal structure of the program, but how it actually functioned in practice. We'll look at the guideline shortly. It sets out the marking criteria, but in essence, the committee focuses on things like the level of management support, the practicality of the manual, the relevance and effectiveness of training, and how the company monitored, reported, and addressed compliance issues over time. In terms of scoring, the rules have also changed. Until last year, a company's grade was downgraded if it was caught for misconduct, but that rule is now removed. Instead, if a company has filed a criminal charge or received surcharge by KFTC during the evaluation year, a 5-point reduction can apply. And in more serious situations, for example, where the conduct significantly undermines the credibility of the CP policy, this evaluation committee can still downgrade the final rating or even refusing to issue a grade, regardless of the given score. So this is the basic structure of the guideline. It's organized into 4 dimensions and 7 pillars. As you saw from the chart on the previous page, the guideline applies different sets of indicators depending on whether the applicant is a large enterprise, an SME, or a public institution. Public enterprises are categorized as large enterprises for the purpose of the evaluation. The detailed indicators under each pillar are what the evaluators use to assess how the program is being run. That's really all you need to know here. I won't go through them all in this video. This is the sample page of the guideline. Although the final result is presented simply as A, AA, or AAA, the underlying scoring uses a broader range from F all the way up to S, with detailed requirements for each band. These indicators combine both quantitative and qualitative criteria. You can download the full Korean guideline from the link in the slides if you'd like to explore it. So, how does the evaluation actually work? First, companies apply in March and submit their documents. The key document is the performance report, which is more than 200 pages long. They also submit the compliance manual and a short summary of key achievements. Second, the evaluators conduct a document review looking at evidence such as training records, monitoring outcomes, internal audit results, and anything else showing how the program was operated. Third, there's a face-to-face evaluation, essentially a presentation following by questions about how the program works in practice. Fourth, if the company appears to be performing strongly, generally at the AA level or above, the evaluators carry out an on-site assessment. This allows them to confirm that what's written in the documents is actually happening in day-to-day operation. In the slide, I used the term interview and on-site evaluation following the Korean wordings, but in practice, they're both carried out on-site, just with different levels of depth. Finally, the evaluation committee consolidates everything and issues the final grade. Now, let's turn to the incentives, and I believe this is the part many companies are most interested in. The first major incentive is surcharge reduction. If a company with an effective CP receives a corrective order from the KFTC, the administrative surcharge may be reduced based on the company's CP grade. There is an additional benefit as well. If the companies identify the issue through its own compliance program and voluntarily stopped the misconduct before the KFTC began its investigation, it can receive an extra reduction of up to 5 percentage points. However, there are important exceptions. The reduction cannot apply if the compliance officer was involved in the wrongdoing, if the violation happened before the CP was introduced, in cartel cases, or if a director-level executive was involved. The second major incentive is exemption from ex officio investigations. Companies that receive AA or higher can be exempted from routine investigations for a certain period. generally around 1.5 years for AA and around 2 years for AAA, although certain types of cases are excluded. The third incentive is commendation. A company that maintains an AA or above for 2 consecutive years may receive a commendation from the chairperson of the KFTC. So the thing that makes Korea's framework unique is that the evaluation is done in advance, before any issue occurs. In many countries, a compliance program is assessed only after a violation. Korea takes a different approach. Now, some might say applying one uniform standard to every company can easily turn into a one-size-fits-all model, which we all try to avoid. But the reality in Korea is slightly different. Because the KFTC handles a very heavy enforcement workload, receiving well over 20,000 complaints and reports each year, and processing roughly 2,000 to 3,000 cases, it simply isn't practical to conduct fully bespoke company-specific assessments at the moment of each violation. So the evaluation guideline provides a standard structure, and the evaluation committee assesses how well each company fits that structure while still taking into account the company's risk profile and business model. This approach has several benefits. A strong government-driven policy helps spread CP quickly and gives companies a clear benchmark for what good program looks like. Also, it encourages companies to operate CP proactively, and from the regulator's perspective, it supports administrative efficiency by reducing the need for reactive case-by-case assessment. Okay, just to quickly sum things up, participation in the CP evaluation has increased significantly since the incentive scheme was formalized, and as more companies take part, the standards for the higher ratings, AA and especially AAA, have naturally become tougher. The evaluation has also become more focused on how the program works in real life, and not just what's written on paper, but whether people understand the risks, whether training is genuinely happening, whether employees know where to report issues, and how effectively the company responds. A growing emphasis on risk is also clear, even though the guideline doesn't explicitly describe itself as risk-based. Evaluators increasingly probe how companies identify and manage their most significant risks. Overall, the direction is unmistakable. The KFTC wants compliance programs that actually work, programs that prevent problems and support good business practice day to day. As just before I finish, let me briefly introduce who we are. At Gilbert Compliance, we specialize in fair trade and competition law compliance. We help companies design, operate, and enhance compliance programs that align with the KFTC's expectation in a practical and realistic way. We supported companies across a wide range of industries, from multinational groups to public institutions, and we fully contributed to the 2019 revision of the CP guideline, which has given us close insight into how the CP system has developed over time. So that brings me to the end. I hope this gave you a clear understanding of how Korea's CP evaluation works and where the policy is heading. If your company operates in Korea or plans to, having a strong, well-run compliance program generally makes a difference, both for the evaluation and for everyday risk management. If you have any questions or would like support with any stage of the CP evaluation, please feel free to get in touch. Thank you for watching.